The twin suns beat down hard on the cracked desert ground. A warm wind blew dust across the empty land, stinging every eye and nose. In the middle of this dry world stood a wooden stage, old, broken, but still used. This was the auction block, where beings from across the stars were sold like animals. Crowds gathered, aliens from different worlds, some in fine clothes, others in rags. Traders shouted loudly, showing off each slave like they were meat. Strong arms, good for mining. One trader yelled, pulling a large creature forward. Only 10 credits. 10 credits for this beast. People shouted back with offers, some cruel, some bored. Coins changed hands, collars were locked, and names were erased, but no one looked. At the corner of the stage, there, sitting in the dirt, was a small alien girl. Her skin was pale gray, her clothes torn, and her legs too weak to stand. She had long dark hair full of sand, and her eyes, large and silver, stared down at her hands. She didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't move. Her name was Lyra, but no one here knew that. To the traders, she was just leftover, a thing that hadn't sold at the last auction. She's broken, one trader laughed. Can't even walk, probably mute too. Another spat near her. We'll toss her with the waste after this batch is done. The last slave was sold. A big creature with 4 arms. The crowd clapped, and many began to leave. A few stayed to laugh at the girl in the corner. One man didn't laugh. He stood at the edge of the crowd, wearing an old coat and desert boots. His face was tired, his hair messy, and his eyes sharp like someone who had seen too much. His name was Marcus, a human, the only one in the crowd today. As the traders packed their things, Marcus pointed, "What about her?" The laughter stopped for a moment. "That? A trader," said, surprised. "She's worthless, can't talk, can't work, probably dying." Marcus stepped forward. "Still, how much?" The traders looked at each other, confused. One shrugged. "Give me 5 credits and that coat of yours. You really want that trash?" Marcus removed his coat slowly and handed it over. He reached into his pocket and gave the 5 credits. "Take her then," the trader chuckled. "You'll regret it." Marcus walked toward the girl. Careful and slow, Lyra didn't look up. She flinched as his shadow fell on her. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, kneeling beside her. "I'm not going to hurt you." She still didn't move, but she didn't pull away either. Gently, Marcus lifted her into his arms. She was light, too light, like someone who hadn't eaten in days. Her skin was cold, her breath weak. He wrapped her in a thin blanket from his pack and carried her toward his small desert speeder. Behind him, the traders laughed again. "Stupid human," one said. "What's he gonna do with a broken doll like that?" But Marcus didn't look back. The speeder hummed to life and rolled away from the auction block, into the open desert. Lyra rested in his lap, not asleep, not awake, just quiet. As they moved across the sand, Marcus looked down at her and spoke. Gently, "I don't know who you are, or what they did to you, but I promise, you're not trash." The wind picked up, covering the old auction block with dust once more. The traders forgot the girl, forgot the human, and laughed about other things. But somewhere in the desert, inside that quiet little speeder, something important had begun. A life no one wanted, a girl no one believed in, and a human who saw what others missed. For now, Lyra remained silent, broken in body and spirit, but deep inside her, something still burned. The desert sun dropped slowly behind the distant rocks, turning the sky into a sea of orange and purple. Marcus's speeder reached a lonely camp built from scrap and cloth. It wasn't much, just a tent, a water tank, and a small heater, but to someone like Lyra, it was a palace. He parked the speeder and turned off the engine. The silence of the desert returned. Soft and wide, Lyra stayed still in his arms. Light as air, her eyes were open, but she didn't speak. Marcus placed her on a thin bed inside the tent. He lit a lamp, bringing soft yellow light into the space. Then he placed a metal bowl of water beside her, along with a dry piece of bread and a heating pack. "You don't have to eat now," he said gently. But it's here if you want it." She didn't move, not even to look at him. Her silver eyes stared at the ground like it might swallow her whole. Marcus sighed, took off his boots, and sat near the tent entrance. His weapon stayed beside him, just in case. But his eyes were on the stars, not on her. Time passed slowly. Then he heard a faint sound behind him, like paper being torn gently. He turned his head slightly. Lyra had reached for the bread. Her hands shook as she tried to break it. But she didn't stop. Not once did she look at him, but she ate every crumb, silently. The water followed, one sip at a time. Marcus didn't say a word. When she finished, she crawled back to the blanket and curled into a ball. Hugging herself, the desert got cold at night, but she didn't ask for more warmth. Marcus reached into his pack, pulled out his only spare jacket, and placed it gently over her. She flinched but didn't push it away. Not worth the chain. He whispered, thinking out loud. That's what they said. He looked at her face, still turned away, but they didn't see what I saw. She closed her eyes, pretending not to hear, but inside her heart, something moved, a soft ache that wasn't fear, but confusion. The next day, Marcus worked on repairing the solar panels outside. Lyra stayed inside the tent, watching from a gap in the cloth. He fixed wires, brushed dust off the panels, and tested the heater. Not once did he shout. Not once did he break anything in anger. That confused her even more. That evening, he cooked something warm, thick broth with root vegetables. The smell filled the tent, making her stomach twist in hunger. He placed a bowl near her again and stepped away, watching her from a distance. She hesitated, but hunger won. She took the bowl with both hands and drank slowly, carefully. You're safe here, he said. I'm not like them. She paused, her eyes narrowing. Her voice was dry when she finally whispered, why? It was her first word, weak but real. Marcus smiled a little. Why what? She looked at him now, just for a second. Why buy me? He leaned back, surprised by the question. Because you were the only one no one wanted, he said, and that didn't sit right with me. She blinked, confused. That's not a reason, Marcus chuckled softly. Maybe not to them, but to me, it is. Silence returned for a moment, but it was no longer empty. Something had shifted between them. That night, she didn't curl up far away. She lay closer to the fire and pulled the jacket around her tightly. She still didn't smile, still didn't trust him, but something inside her felt less cold. As Marcus lay down and looked at the stars, he remembered something from Earth. My father once told me, he said aloud, not knowing if she was awake. Real worth isn't measured in price or power. It's measured in how someone survives, even when everything is taken from them. He looked toward her one more time. Her eyes were open, staring at the flames. Lyra didn't speak, but her fingers slowly curled around the edge of the jacket, holding it close. Outside, the desert wind howled, carrying sand across the empty night. But inside the tent, where two broken souls now shared warmth and silence, a small quiet flame that started to grow. Days passed like quiet winds across the desert. Lyra still didn't speak much, but she was no longer hiding. She moved slowly around the small camp, her steps weak but steady. Marcus never asked questions, never forced her to talk. He just let her exist, and somehow, that silence felt safer than any words ever had. Each morning, he handed her a simple task, holding a wire while he repaired something, wiping dust off a screen, refilling the water tank from their reserve. She did it, without complaint, without fear. But the moment someone else's voice came through the radio or an engine echoed in the distance, she froze. One day, she found an old data screen among the junk Marcus had piled near the fence. It was cracked and dusty, but when she touched it, the light blinked on. Marcus watched from a distance, curious. She didn't notice. Her fingers moved across the screen fast, too fast for someone who'd been called broken. Words in alien code flashed by, lines of faded maps and locked files. She exited it quickly and pushed the device back into the junk like it had burned her. Marcus walked over slowly. You read that? He asked gently. She didn't answer. Her eyes were distant again, guarded. He didn't press. Just picked up the screen and placed it on his tool bench. That night, while she slept under the soft hum of the heater, Marcus opened the datapad and scanned it again. Encrypted files, locked memories, broken records. It wasn't just a screen. It was a part of something bigger. He looked at the girl sleeping just a few feet away. Who exactly are you, he wondered, and why would someone abandon you like trash if you're this smart? The next morning, Lyra sat outside the tent, watching a beetle crawl across the sand. She didn't look up as Marcus approached with 2 mugs of hot broth. He handed one to her, and for the first time, she accepted it without hesitation. They sat in silence. The only sound was wind and small sips. Then, out of nowhere, she whispered, "They told me I was broken." Marcus turned his head toward her slowly. "They were wrong." She didn't answer, but her fingers gripped the mug tighter. "They did something to me," she continued, voice shaking. "They put things in my head, made me forget, made me remember." "Wrong things." Marcus kept his voice calm. "Do you remember who they were?" "No," she said. "Only the lights and the pain and the cages." Her eyes were distant again, swimming in fear. Marcus didn't move closer, but his voice became firm. "You're not in a cage anymore." She looked at him, truly looked at him for the first time. Her eyes searched his face like she was trying to find a lie, but there was none. "I don't know who I was," she said, "but I don't want to go back." "You won't," Marcus replied. "Not while I'm alive." In the distance, the sand began to shift. A small drone flew low over the dunes, unnoticed by either of them. Its camera scanned, its signal blinked, and then it vanished into the wind again. Later that night, Marcus opened the datapad again. He tried a few codes, a few bypass tricks he'd learned during his old scavenger days. One file opened for half a second before crashing. But what he saw chilled him. A single image: Lyra, younger, covered in wires, eyes wide with fear. She wasn't a nobody. She had been tested, recorded, and labeled Asset X97, failure to comply. Subject terminated, but she was alive. Marcus closed the screen and looked over at Lyra, who now slept curled beside the fire, a hint of peace on her face. She didn't know, or maybe she did, and buried it deep. He whispered under his breath, "They're going to come looking for you." She shifted slightly in her sleep but didn't wake. The stars above blinked silently, like eyes watching from a distance. Far away, in a ship orbiting the outer edge of the planet, a signal came alive. Coordinates locked, target reacquired, subject Lyra, but in a small tent, hidden in dust and silence. A human and a forgotten girl were building something stronger than fear. Not family, not yet, but something like trust, and that would soon be tested. The air was thick that morning, heavier than usual. Even the desert wind seemed to whisper warnings as it passed through the torn cloth of Marcus's tent. Lyra woke early, her eyes wide open, as if she had dreamed something she could not explain. Marcus had gone outside to check the solar fence, but Lyra didn't follow. She sat by the fire, staring at her hands that trembled not from cold, but from something deep inside her chest. Something rising, something hot. Last night, she had dreamed of a dark room, walls filled with wires, her arms strapped down, a cold voice saying, "Begin phase 3, then came pain, and then light, a strange golden light pulsing inside her own body. She gasped, her hands glowing faintly for just a moment before fading. She covered them quickly, afraid. Outside, Marcus tapped a rusted panel with a wrench. It made a sharp clink, echoing. Across the rocks, he stood up and looked at the horizon, his eyes narrowed. A strange shimmer danced far in the distant dust, but moving too fast for wind. He rushed back to the tent. "Lyra, pack your things," he said firmly. Now she looked up confused. "Why? What's wrong?" "They found you," he replied. "I saw scout dust. We don't have much time." Fear struck her like ice. "I didn't send anything, I swear. I know, Marcus said, kneeling in front of her. But they've got machines, drones, heat trackers, signal sniffers. They know you're alive. He grabbed a small bag, stuffed it with food, water packs, and tools. Lyra hesitated for only a moment before she helped. Her hands still shook, but her movements were sharp, fast, almost trained. They mounted the speeder and pushed into the canyon roots, paths only scavengers knew. The wind picked up again, this time carrying sound engines, low and mechanical. They weren't alone anymore. Hold on, Marcus said, speeding through narrow paths between jagged cliffs. Lyra turned her head and saw it. A silver drone chasing them, sleek, fast, with blinking red eyes. It fired a pulse blast, missing by inches and striking the rock wall beside them. The cliff shook, raining dust and stones. Why are they hunting me? She cried. Why not just leave me alone? Marcus didn't answer right away. He focused on driving, dodging sharp turns and falling debris. Finally, he said, because maybe you're not just someone they lost. Maybe you're something they're afraid of. Another shot struck the back of the speeder. Sparks flew. Lyra screamed as they jerked forward. Then, without thinking, she raised her hand, just a hand, and the drone exploded mid-air. No weapon, no signal, just her hand, and that strange golden glow again. Both of them stared at the smoke rising from the canyon wall. Lyra gasped, holding her chest. I didn't mean to. I didn't know. It's okay, Marcus said softly, stunned but calm. You're not broken, Lyra. You're powerful. They stopped at an old mining station, half buried under sand and rust. Inside, Marcus ran a scan on her more carefully this time. The old machine blinked and beeped, slowly showing results. What they saw wasn't normal. Lyra's body had been modified. Half her DNA wasn't even known. Her nerves had tiny filaments like artificial roots, and her brain, it pulsed with energy not even the machine could read. She's not just alien, Marcus whispered to himself. She's built. Lyra sat quietly, tears rolling down her cheeks. Am I even real? She asked, her voice barely a breath. Marcus kneeled beside her again, just like he had the first night. You bleed, you cry, you care. That's real enough, he said. They tried to erase you, but you're still here. A soft alarm blinked on the screen. Another signal, moving closer. Bigger this time. Marcus stood. They won't stop, he said. Not until they take you or kill you. Lyra wiped her tears and stood too. Her legs were steadier now. Her eyes no longer looked down. I won't run anymore, she said, voice strong but quiet. I want to remember who I was, but I also want to decide who I will be. He looked at her and nodded. Then we fight smart. We hide better. We learn what they did to you. Outside, the wind howled again. But now it wasn't just carrying fear. It carried warning, because something was waking inside the girl they called worthless, something ancient, something dangerous, and someone was going to regret ever calling her trash. The sky was gray as ash when Marcus and Lyra reached the edge of Karna. It wasn't the city anymore, not really, just bones of steel, towers bent by time, and fields of rusted machines stretching as far as the eye could see. Lyra stared at it through the speeder's window, her voice soft. This place smells like metal and ghosts. Marcus nodded. That's not far from the truth. Karna had once been a mining colony. Now it was just a graveyard. Machines that once drilled into mountains now sat still, covered in sand, forgotten. But somewhere deep in this field of wreckage lived an old friend of Marcus, someone who owed him a favor, and someone who could read secrets hidden inside flesh and wire. They hid the speeder beneath a collapsed metal arch, then walked carefully through the ruins. Every sound echoed. Lyra stayed close, her eyes sharp, scanning every shadow. Suddenly, a voice came from behind a broken wall. You brought company. Marcus, that's rare. An old alien stepped out, short, wide, and covered in grease. His 4 eyes blinked behind cracked goggles. His name was Brell, a junk engineer known for fixing machines others gave up on. She's not a machine, Marcus said quickly, placing a hand in front of Lyra. She's something more, and we need answers. Brel raised an eyebrow and chuckled. Everyone who comes here wants answers, but they don't always like them. Inside Brel's workshop, a huge rusted dome filled with wires, blinking lights, and scrap parts, Lyra lay on a metal bed, cables connected gently to her arms and neck. Scanning deeper than anything Marcus had ever seen, Brel muttered to himself, watching readings scroll across his screen. This girl is a mess of locked code, suppressed memories, biological layering. What were they trying to create? Lyra stayed quiet, her hands clutching the edge of the bed. I don't want to be a weapon, she whispered. You might not have a choice. Brel said, not unkindly, but you do have control now. Marcus stood beside her, arms crossed. Can you unlock any of it? Brel scratched his chin. Maybe, but it'll hurt. Lyra looked at Marcus, her voice steady. I'm ready. The process began slowly, one lock at a time. And as each memory flickered back, her body tensed. She saw men in masks, doctors, without faces, voices telling her she was nothing unless she obeyed. She saw other children alien like her, crying, disappearing, one by one. They vanished, and she remained. Then darkness, a cold capsule, dumped into a trader's crate like scrap. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but her jaw stayed tight. Brel shut off the machine. That's enough for now. Her system's reacting too strongly. Lyra sat up, breathing hard. They erased us, she said. We were built to be used. And when we didn't work, they threw us away. Marcus stepped forward. But you're not broken, Lyra. You survived. Brel turned toward them both. She's more than a survivor, he said. She's a key. A key to what? Marcus asked, frowning. There's tech inside her, ancient, mixed with modern biotech. It matches something I saw once in an abandoned research lab. Brel explained. They were trying to make a weapon. One that could adapt to any threat. Marcus shook his head. Then why throw her away? Maybe she was too powerful, Brel said darkly. Maybe she refused to kill. Lyra stood. The air around her slightly warmer now, her fingertips glowed again, just barely. I didn't want to become what they made, she said. But I also won't keep running. Marcus looked at her with quiet respect. Then we need to prepare. But outside the dome, something had found them. A small black drone, silent as night, hovered just out of range. Its red eye blinked twice, then vanished into the storm rolling over Karna that night. Brel gave Lyra a datapad with the files they had recovered. This might lead you to others, he said. Maybe not all of them were destroyed. Lyra held it carefully, like it was a piece of her past returned to her hands. I'm not alone, she whispered. I was never the only one. The wind howled through the ruins, but inside the dome, there was something stronger than fear now. There was purpose. They came to Karna for answers, but what they found was the beginning of a war, and the girl the galaxy called worthless was starting to become something it couldn't control. Night fell over Karna like a curtain of smoke. The stars were hidden behind thick clouds, and lightning danced in silence across the horizon. Inside the rusted dome, Lyra sat by the firelight, holding the old datapad Brel had given her. She hadn't spoken in hours. Not since she saw the files. Her hands trembled, not with fear this time, but with rage. Marcus walked over and sat beside her. What did you find? She looked up slowly, her silver eyes glowing faintly. I was never alone, Marcus, she whispered. There were others like me, children from many worlds, taken, changed. She turned the datapad to him, showing a list of coded names, photos. Status: missing, terminated, unknown. All gone, she said. Except me. Marcus stared at the screen, his jaw tight. And now they know you're alive. Lyra nodded. They'll come not just for me, but for whatever's locked inside me. Brel entered from the back room, wiping his oily hands on a cloth. I've reinforced the outer walls, but if they're sending hunters, this place won't hold. We need to move, Marcus said. Head west, into the canyon systems. Lose them in the maze. Lyra stood, her voice firm. No, I'm not hiding anymore. Marcus looked at her. Surprised. Lyra, they'll come with weapons, machines, maybe even more of those drones. Let them, she said. I've run enough. If they want what's inside me, they'll have to face it. The air around her pulsed slightly. Warm and strange. The lights in the dome flickered, as if reacting to her will. Brel stepped back, watching her carefully. You're changing, he said. The more memories you get back, the more energy you release. I'm remembering what they tried to erase, she replied. And it's making me stronger. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He sat outside, rifle across his lap. Watching the shadows, he thought of Earth, how simple life had been before he took that job. To deliver salvage on a dying desert world. He never expected to rescue anyone, and he never expected to feel what he felt now. Lyra wasn't just some lost alien girl. She was a symbol of what the galaxy had forgotten. Hope. Just before dawn, the sky lit up, but not from the sun. A blue light shot down from the clouds. A drop pod, fast, silent, deadly. It crashed just outside the scrap fields, and within seconds, soldiers poured out. Black armor, red visors, moving like shadows. Brel shouted from inside, "We've got company!" Lyra stepped out first, her arms bare, no armor, no weapon, just her. Standing tall in the rusted dirt, the soldiers stopped when they saw her. One of them raised a scanner. "Target acquired," he said. "Subject X97, confirmed active." Lyra didn't run. Her feet were steady, her voice clear. "You called me a failure," she said. "Now you've come to finish the job." The commander stepped forward. "Return now, and we'll spare the others." Lyra closed her eyes. Her hands began to glow. That same soft gold, brighter now, alive with heat. "I'm not going with you," she said calmly. "And I'm not the girl you buried in the dust." Marcus aimed his rifle from the roof. "She's not alone," he called out. Brel activated shock coils around the dome, lightning snapping across the fences. The soldiers opened fire, but the bullets never reached her. They bent around her like wind through a shield. Her energy cracking the air like thunder, Lyra raised her hands, and the sand beneath her feet lifted into the sky. Spinning into a storm, flashes of memory danced in her mind. The pain, the tests, the voices that told her she was nothing now. She burned it all away with one cry. The storm exploded, knocking soldiers off their feet, frying their weapons, and tearing the command ship's door from its hinges. When the dust settled, the soldiers lay scattered, unconscious or crawling back. Lyra stood untouched, her body glowing like a star. Marcus ran to her side, breathing hard. "You okay?" She nodded, her face calm. "I didn't kill them," she said. "I just made sure they couldn't take me again." Brel stared from the doorway, wide-eyed. "By the stars. She's worth more than any weapon." Marcus looked at her and smiled. "No," he said. "She's worth more than the galaxy ever knew." Lyra turned toward the rising sun. Her past was burned, her name once forgotten. But now the whole universe would remember her, not as a number, not as a failure, but as the girl who rose from the scrap and changed everything. The battlefield was quiet now. Smoke drifted lazily across the rusted fields of Karna, where weapons lay broken and the enemy forces had vanished into the dust. What remained was silence, and Lyra, standing tall in the light of a new day, she looked down at her hands, still faintly glowing, the golden light pulsing gently beneath her skin. Her power was real, her memories clearer now. But most of all, she had finally chosen herself. Marcus stood beside her, bruised but alive, his jacket torn, rifle hanging by a strap. He stared at the place where the command ship had once landed, now just scorched ground and twisted metal. "You could have destroyed them," he said quietly. "But you didn't." "They destroyed enough of me already," Lyra replied, her voice steady. "I didn't want to become like them." Behind them, Brel limped out of the wrecked dome, muttering something about needing a new generator. But when he saw Lyra shining, Unshaken, he stopped and just smiled. You don't need to run anymore, Marcus told her. They know now. You're not just some failed experiment, Lyra nodded slowly. But there are others out there, still hiding, still afraid like I was. She held up the datapad again, showing the list of names. Some of them might still be alive. Marcus looked at the datapad, then at her. So what now? She turned toward the horizon, the wind lifting her hair gently. We find them, she said. We show them they're not worthless. He chuckled softly. And let me guess, we do it the hard way? Lyra smiled faintly. The only way that works. They spent the next few days rebuilding the speeder, adding shielding, more storage, and a long-range scanner Brel found in the junk piles. Lyra worked side by side with Marcus, her movements no longer timid, no longer uncertain. She was different now, not just stronger, but freer. Every scar she carried, every memory they forced into her, had shaped her, but didn't define her. Before they left, Brel gave Lyra a small metal chip, about the size of a coin. Found. This in the wreckage, he said. It's a command key, probably used to control whatever project you came from. You can destroy it or keep it, your choice. She held it between her fingers for a long moment, then she tossed it into the fire, watching the flames turn blue for just a second before fading. I don't need chains anymore, she said, when the speeder was ready. They stood at the edge of Karna, the wind blowing strong across the desert. Brel waved once, already turning. Back to his machines, Marcus climbed into the driver's seat. You ready for whatever's next? Lyra nodded and sat beside him, her silver eyes calm. Let's go find the forgotten, she whispered, and remind them who they are. The engine rumbled to life, pushing them into the rising dawn. Behind them, Karna disappeared into shadow. Ahead of them, a galaxy full of lies, cages, and frightened children waited, but they weren't afraid anymore. Not the girl they said was broken, not the man who saw her worth when no one else did. As they sped across the sands, Marcus glanced at her. You know, he said, back at that auction, they laughed when I offered to buy you. Lyra looked at him with a soft, grateful smile. I remember, she said, and I thought you were a fool. Maybe I was, Marcus replied, but I was your fool. She leaned back in the seat, her hand brushing against his. You were the only one who stayed, she said. The only one who didn't walk away, he smiled. That's because I didn't see a slave or a mistake. I saw someone worth saving, and she replied without hesitation. And now I'll save them too. The wind roared louder as they rode on. But even the desert could not drown the truth anymore. She was the one no one wanted. She was the girl left behind, forgotten. But one human saw her, one human chose her, and that choice changed the galaxy forever.